welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Now done by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. Today I have for you a couple of Star Wars tales and a couple of the Jedi Apprentice series books to go through. So that's what we will be seeing today. So here we go. Non-spoiler wise, for the Jedi Apprentice series, I'm just gonna talk about what the tale short stories are, basically. I mean, I'm not gonna really spoil them, but as for the Jedi Apprentice series, the first book, which is Rising Force by Dave Wolverton being the same person who wrote The Courtship of Princess Leia and some other things. It was a really good introduction to Obi-Wan at the age of 12. No master yet, is currently, just a Padawan at the temple, where it's not a contradiction because basically up until you're a teenager, you're kind of trained by like Yoda and other instructors until you reach like teenage years and you kind of get your own master and so on and so forth. And you think that's going to be Obi-Wan. Sorry, you think it's going to be Qui-Gon by the end of this book, but it is not. They go through an adventure together. They kind of form a bond, but because of the events with Xanatos in the Dark Side comic book series, Qui-Gon is still not ready to take on an apprentice. Then we get into the second book, this time written by Jude Watson, and she'll basically carry on the entire series forward, all like 17 books afterwards. But Jude Watson will do it. She'll also do the sequel series, Jedi Quest, and the series that takes place after Episode 3, which is The Last of the Jedi, and that will be her contribution to the EU. But her book is called Dark Rival, and this is where we get reintroduced. Well, this was written before the Dark Side comic book 5-issue series, but if you're reading it chronologically, this would be we're seeing Xanatos again. But for a lot of people, this was the first time they'd ever heard of Xanatos. But for me, I'm getting to hear about Xanatos again, and stuff happens, and by the end of it, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are master and apprentice. And then book 3, Hidden Past, it begins being Obi-Wan's birthday. He's officially 13. He gets a present from Qui-Gon, which is this stone sort of thing. Adventures ensue with a character that we met in the previous book, and that's basically it, non-spoiler wise. Overall, for the first 3 books in this Jedi Apprentice series, starting with Dave Wolverton, for the rest of it being Jude Watson, it's really great. Seeing a younger Obi-Wan is really interesting, and seeing as we only had one movie with Qui-Gon, getting to get more in depth with his character is really interesting. I mean, there's a lot more books to dive into that, but even with just these 3 books, getting to actually see inside his mind, because most Star Wars books are in the third person, so we get to experience that. It's really interesting, and I like their dynamic, and I'm excited to see how that continues to develop. But all 3 of these stories are pretty interesting. Of course, Xanatos is still alive by the end of the second book, so we are sure to see him again at some point. When that is, who knows? But yeah, that's pretty much it non-spoiler wise. I'm going to start talking about the Tales series, and then right before I talk about slight spoilers for the Jedi Apprentice series, I'll let you know so you don't get spoiled. As for Star Wars Tales, all 3 short little stories are in Star Wars Tales number 13. And the first one we have is Survivors. The art, again, is disgusting. I hate it. The art in this particular short is pretty gross. Basically, Mace Windu he's only a Jedi Knight. He's not a Jedi Master yet, and he's on a mission for the Council. Mace Windu being cool, taking down a bad guy is kind of cool, I guess. But the art's so bad, I can't really enjoy it. But other than that, that's all that story is. The next short story, which again is in the same Star Wars tale, number 13, we get Children of the Force. We actually get to find out that Mace once had a Padawan, because I don't know if you ever really hear about that elsewhere, but he has a Padawan here, so that was interesting. Um, and also, kind of the um, plot is that there's a villain who shows up to kidnap a baby, and that's all I'll say there. You can read it for yourself. This one I actually thought was okay. Touching upon the fact that the Jedi took the children as either young children because they found out later, or like young, like 5, or as infants is because there are a lot of people who regret the decision of leaving the baby, um, and so the the fact that they kind of just touched upon that I thought was really interesting. It was the only good thing from this entire Star Wars tale so far. And then we have, what the fudge is it called? The Secrets of the Tet Emmy. This one is even worse than the Survivor story. Mace Windu is visiting this ancient site, and he time travels to the past. And he had to time travel to the past because he always time traveled to the past, because it's that sort of time travel where if you time travel, then you always have had to time travel. Um, and it's just an awful, awful little story. It is pointless and stupid and horrible. It is an awful, 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 awful story. Just truly baffling how awful that is. I will even freely admit there anything Disney has made is absolutely better than most of Star Wars tales, but that was pure garbage, pure utter garbage. That might actually be considered non-canon by the Legends timeline. I'm not sure. I don't know what is and isn't considered. I know Star Wars Tales was like iffy, like 50-50 was canon with Star Wars Tales. Um, Either it is, and that's just retarded, but whatever, it happened, or it isn't canon. Whatever way, it is a bad story, and I highly recommend you skip it. But if you want to check it out for some reason, it will be in Star Wars Tales number 13. Now we move on to slight spoilers for the 3 young adult books of Jedi Apprentice. If you don't want that, it's time to move on ahead. Otherwise, if you're a veteran or you just don't care about spoilers, welcome. You've been warned. So last freaking warning there. So this is 44 BBY, 44 years before the Battle of Yavin. Obi-Wan is 12 here, or he starts off in the first book 12. There's a bully that Obi-Wan deals with at the academy that likes to get him in trouble, and he actually does end up getting him in trouble. And because because of that, he ends up having to be sent to this planet to be a farmer, because if you don't succeed as like a Jedi or whatever, then you end up having to be a farmer. It's supposed to help, like encourage not becoming like a Dark Lord or something, or not trying to become a dark like side user. And so this guy, so he just gets taken to this other planet, but it just so happens that Qui-Gon is also having a mission on that planet. So on the ride over to the planet, they get to bond a little bit. But by the end of it, even still, despite the adventure they just went on together, Qui-Gon rejects him. Then we move on to book 2, Dark Rival. Obi-Wan reminds me of Anakin a little bit. Obi-Wan, as a young person, is very different from Anakin. But at the same time, you can see here in his youth, I mean, if Qui-Gon had trained Anakin, I truly believe Anakin would not have turned to the dark side. However, there were a lot of other factors that helped turn Anakin to the dark side. It wasn't only because, Obi-Wan trained him as an apprentice and always kind of saw him as a brother instead of a son. But if anyone was going to train Anakin and it wasn't going to be Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan makes the most perfect choice, because they do have similar aspects to each other in their youth. Of course, Obi-Wan was always seems to be a much more respectful student than Anakin ever was. But it's just interesting seeing some little similarities here and there between the two characters and why they kind of bounce off one another so well later on. Maybe we'll see. Maybe I can elaborate further on what I'm trying to say here with that as we move on with the books. It was just something I was like, it reminds me at least. I don't know if there's any specific examples I can give you, but maybe in the future. Um, Obi-Wan is very selfless, which is a very good part of him, which is also kind of a detachment from Anakin. See, Anakin is selfless, but it usually involves people that he cares about. Like he cares for the clone troopers. He'll try to protect them. He cares about Obi-Wan. He'll try to protect him. He cares about Padme. He'll try to protect her. Um, I mean, of course, he's going to help, innocent civilians too, but I don't know. It just feels like everything Anakin does is kind of like surrounded around selfishness. Kind of like, but mixed in with selflessness. I don't know if that makes sense. But I do really admire Obi-Wan's selflessness, and even Qui-Gon can see that. And then, of course, as I said before, by the end of the book, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are now master and apprentice. Book 3, Hidden Past. So at the beginning of this book, Obi-Wan is 13, and as I mentioned, he gets a stone for a present. It's also from Qui-Gon's home planet. They end up on this planet, which is the same planet. It's the planet of the Finidins, which Gora from the last book, because Obi-Wan gets trapped in a prison to work in the mines forever because of Xanatos for a bit, and he meets Gora there. So we get to see Gora again in this book and learn about the troubles on his home planet now that he's escaped. And so that's where that's at. Like much later on, near the end of the young adult book, Gora talks to Obi-Wan, because like the whole book he's kind of, that's kind of like his whole thing was like he was like, oh yes, so no, so I lie, like he's a very like supposed to be like funny type of character, but he gets kind of like really serious with Obi-Wan in that scene, and I always appreciate like dialogue moments between two characters that are, you know, more than surface level, like deep. And not that it was like a super deep scene or anything, but they were just being genuine and honest with each other, and I appreciated that a lot. Also, Gora's sister is mind wiped. They have this whole thing where like they have it so organics can be mind wiped on the planet, which is like a really horrible like concept. And Gora's sister is like this evil person because she had her mind wiped and she grew up with like these evil people, so now she's evil. But near the end of it, Obi-Wan's pretending to be this person and stuff, and in the event, the sister dies. And I love that Goro doesn't really get upset with Obi-Wan for anything, because he didn't do anything. That was like this other guy's fault. But still, sister dies, which is a little sad, because they're hoping, that maybe they can bring her memory back one day or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of where the story ends. They were originally supposed to be going on a mission to this planet called Gala, but they got sidetracked with this book. So by the next book, I believe we shall actually be going on with what their mission actually was. So we'll be seeing that next time we come back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe. So far, I'm absolutely adoring this Jedi Apprentice series. Getting to learn more about Qui-Gon is super cool. Getting to learn more about Obi-Wan's early years is also really great. Because, Obi-Wan's one of the best characters in Star Wars. And so getting to see more of his youth is a really interesting thing to witness. And I'm excited to see more of it. And I hope you all join me as I continue my journey through the expanding universe in chronological order, as best I know how. You should go subscribe to Matt Wilkins if you haven't already. But anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day, night, whenever you're watching this, and may the Force be with you.